In this video, we're doing an updated tutorial on how to set up the MCDU in the Airbus using both the Simbrief integration as well as setting everything up manually. That's coming up next. Hello Sim pilots, welcome back to another Microsoft Flight Simulator tutorial video. Today we're going to be going through how to set up the MCDU in the Airbus using the A320nx from FlyByWire Simulations. I did make a video on this subject a while ago, but with all the updates this aircraft has received, that one is now a little bit outdated, so I thought it's time for a new one. Today's video we'll go through setting up the MCDU using the built-in Simbrief integration option, and then we'll do the same flight setting it up manually by inputting all the data ourselves, for those of you that don't use Simbrief. So for today's example, I'm using the flight that I did a couple of days ago from Gatwick to Munich with our alternate as Frankfurt. Now if you have a look at the top right corner here with the green bar, you can see it says ARAC2308. That's telling us that we're using the current ARAC available for Microsoft Flight Simulator as well as Navigraph. Now you can use Simbrief, the free version, but you will have an outdated ARAC cycle. It's not really an issue if you're flying offline. The only problem with that is Microsoft Flight Simulator update their navigation database with every sim update. So eventually you are going to fall behind and it's going to cause airway and waypoint mismatches. If you're ever inputting a flight plan into your MCDU and you come across that error that says airway or waypoint mismatch, that is the reason for it. Now in ARAC, if you have a look at the ICAO website, Aeronautical Information Regulation and Control. Aeronautical information is constantly changing. Airspace structures and routes are revised, navigation age change, SIDS and stars are amended, runway and taxiway information changes. It is essential for both efficiency and safety that pilots, dispatchers, air traffic controllers, air traffic flow managers, flight management systems, and aeronautical charts all have the same information working from the same information base. Now, this can only be achieved by adhering to the ARAC schedule. Now, these ARAC schedules are updated every 28 days. So after this one, we'll have 2309. Now, as I said earlier, it's not really an issue if you're flying offline. If you're flying on VATSIM, I would highly suggest that you have an updated ARAC cycle, because you're going to get SIDS stars that might not match what you have in your MCDU. Right, so for today's flight, we are Easy 8641. We are going from Gatwick to Munich with our alternate as Frankfurt. We have an air time of 1 hour 24 minutes, block time of 1 hour 52. Here's our flight plan summary, cruising altitude of 370, cost index of 10. Here's our load sheet, and here is our route. Now we've got, these are our waypoints and our airways. Now you can see just the highlighted part. We got a waypoint, an airway, a waypoint, an airway, a waypoint, an airway, then a waypoint, direct to another waypoint, direct to another waypoint, an airway, another waypoint, an airway, and another waypoint. We're going to leave out the standard terminal arrival route and the runways. That's not included when we import the data to our MCDU from Simbrief, because that can be changed by air traffic controllers if we're flying online. Let's jump into the sim and get started with the setup from the MCDU. Right, here we are inside of the A320nx by FlyByWire Simulations. We're on stand 562 at Gatwick, completely powered down. And a few prerequisites before we start setting up the MCDU. We're not going to be flying today, so I'm not going to set up the whole aircraft. I'm just going to turn on the batteries and I'm going to connect the external power to give us some power to the aircraft. Up on the overhead panel, we need to make sure that we set the ADIRS 1, 2, and 3 to the nav positions. So that's 1, 2, and 3. That's going to enable us to see our flight plan on the navigation display. Let's just turn up the brightness for this one, because that's the one we're going to be looking at. We'll turn up the brightness for the MCDU as well. Now let's head on over to the flight pad and turn that on so we can get our Simbrief information. First things first, if you do use Simbrief, go to the settings at the bottom over here. Go to ATSU here at the bottom where it says Simbrief username / pilot ID. Stick in your pilot ID or your Simbrief username. That you can get from your account settings page on the Simbrief website. So there we go, mine is 53150. No point in you guys copying that because it's just going to give you my flight plan. So there it is, it has been validated and updated. Now we know that the A320nx has been connected to our Simbrief account. So if we go to the main page and we go import Simbrief data, it's going to bring up that flight information from Simbrief. There we have Gatwick to Munich, there's our route that we're going through now, our weather information, etc. If we go to the ground page, fuel, here we can have refuel time, instant, fast, and real. I'm just going to set it to fast for now so they can refuel while we are busy setting up the MCDU. Now you need to download the block fuel where it says full block fuel from Simbrief. We're going to download it, and then it says 6.3 tons, and then we're going to press load. And now it says refueling. Same thing on the payload page, instant, fast, real. Let's go fast, and then here it's the little download, full payload information from Simbrief. We're going to fill that up, and then we're going to move it across, and they're going to start loading. There you can see the seats are starting to be filled up. With that underway, we can go ahead and begin the setup on the MCDU. On first look at the MCDU, we're going to be presented with a page that says MCDU menu. First things first, we're going to go to ATSU, AOC menu, init, and then we're going to go init data request. This is going to pull up all our information from Simbrief. Call sign is correct, departure is correct, destination is correct, fuel on board 6.3. Estimated time on route 1 hour 24 minutes. That all looks correct. And then we can go back to the main menu, MCDU menu. Now when setting up the MCDU, we use the acronym DIFSRIP. Now these acronyms we use for data, init A, flight plan, secondary flight plan, radnav, init B, and our performance page. That is the order we're going to be setting up the MCDU. So first things first, let's go to FMGC, and this is going to present us with our main page over here. As you can see, we have the correct AIRAC cycle, which is 2308. That is a navigation database that I was talking about earlier, to make sure we keep that up to date in order to prevent airway and waypoint mismatches. Let's get started with the setup. So first things first, data. The data includes the pages below, which are position monitor, RS monitor, GPS monitor, aircraft status, closest airports, equitime point, waypoints, nav aids, runways, and routes. Now, at the moment, we're not using this page to set anything up in the MCDU, so we're going to skip to the next one, which is the init A page. Now, all of these orange boxes require information. Because we're using the Simbrief integration, I don't have to fill anything manually. I'll just go init request. And there we go. Everything's pulled up from Simbrief. So there we have our from to, which is Gatwick to Munich, our alternate, our flight number, our crossed index, and our cruising flight level temperature.
Boarding completed.
Next page after that we're going to do is the flight plan page. Now as you can see, this matches our flight plan. All the waypoints and our airways are in here. So we have Gatwick, airway Yankee 311, Delta Victor Romeo, airway Uniform Lima 9, and so on and so forth. Now while we're here, we can set up the departure. If you're flying online, you would only get your departure clearance once you contact VATSIM ATC, but because we're not doing that today, I'm just going to input the standard instrument departure. Now we need the standard instrument departure when we get to the performance page. If it's not done by the time we get to the performance page, we need to come back here and do the standard instrument departure. So let's go up today for Echo Golf Kilo Kilo. We're going to go departure. Let's say we're taking off 08 right, and it's going to be the Gatwick to Zulu departure, because Gatwick is our first waypoint. So let's just insert that there. And if we scroll down here, you see we have a flight plan discontinuity. That's because there's a gap between Gatwick and our next waypoint, which is Delta Victor Romeo. Gatwick is the last waypoint of our standard instrument departure. Now if we have a look at the navigation display, let me just bring that up for you a little bit bigger. Turn it to our plan. You will see, let me just zoom out a little bit here. You will see this gap between Gatwick and Delta Victor Romeo. That is because of the flight plan discontinuity. So what we need to do is we need to clear that. So we press the clear button and we select the line select key next to flight plan discontinuity, and that's going to bridge that gap between Gatwick and Delta Victor Romeo. Now that that's closed up, we can continue scrolling towards our destination, and you can see we have our last waypoint, which is Rockhill, and then we have a gap between Rockhill and Munich. So we need to put in our standard terminal arrival route. So if we click on destination arrival, we're going to do the ILS 26 right. It's going to be the Rockhill 1 Bravo arrival, and it's going to be via Mike. So we're going to insert that over there. And if we go all the way back again, scroll through our flight plan, you can see we have our arrival over there. Let me just zoom in a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. From Rockhill, we're going to Mike, and then we are going to the ILS for 26 right. I am referencing my Navigraph charts. And like I said, I did fly this flight the other night, so this is the arrival runway that I used. It was appropriate for the weather at the time. I'm not sure what the weather is in Munich today, but we're not going to do this flight. This is just purely for demonstration purposes. So as you can see there, we got a full flight from Gatwick to Munich with no discontinuities, no gaps, no funny looking circles in our route. Let's continue with the MCDU setup. So after flight plan, we have secondary flight plan, which at the moment is not implemented into the FlyByWire A32nx. So let's skip ahead to the RadNav page. Now the RadNav page is used to reference VORs, ADFs, ILSs, etc. for your departure and your approach. Now in this example, it's automatically put in the frequency of 115.1, and that's for the Biggins VOR, which is near Gatwick. If we go back to the navigation display over here, let me just change it back to ARC, and here we have our pointers. If I select that onto VOR, there you can see the VOR displayed over there, and we have an arrow pointing towards this VOR. Now as we move the aircraft, this arrow will move, it'll always face towards the VOR. So that's just for references. Now you can set that up, you can have a secondary one there, you can also have ADF frequencies at the bottom over here, and that can be displayed on your navigation display. After the RadNav page, we have India for init B. So we go back to init and we use the arrow to the right, and we need to continue filling in all this information over here. So we have our block fuel, our zero fuel weight, trip winds, etc. So let's go ahead and fill in our block fuel. Now our block fuel is, you can get it from here. Fuel on board, 6,300 kilograms. We fill it in here in tons, so it'll be 6.3. You could also reference it on the operational flight plan from Simbrief. So if we go here to our operational flight plan, you see we have 6210. It's been rounded up to 6,300. So that is correct. So we're going to input 6.3 into our block fuel. Our zero fuel weight needs to match our operational flight plan. So if we scroll down here we have our zero fuel weight of 60.6. Now if we've got the correct passengers, cargo and payload, then our zero fuel weight should be 60.6. Our fuel 6.2 gives us takeoff weights of 66.6. So let's go ahead and put 60.6 in the zero fuel weight. Now to make sure that it's correctly loaded, we don't type in 60.6. We select the line select key on the right next to zero fuel weight, and it populates the zero fuel weight of the aircraft for us. So it says 60.6. If we haven't loaded the correct amount of passengers or cargo in that amount won't match. So we're going to select that in there, 60.6, 66.7 is our takeoff weight, which is 0.1 different to what it says there. That's because we have 6.3 tons of fuel loaded. Trip winds we can get from the operational flight plan as well. So if we scroll all the way back up to the top, here you see our average wind component, and it says plus 24. Now a plus is a tailwind, it's going to push us faster. A minus is a headwind. So we're going to go plus 24, and if we stick that in there, you're going to see it's going to change our flight time, because we've got a tailwind, we can fly a little bit faster. So there's decreased our flight time by 4 minutes because we've got a tailwind of 24 knots. It's going to give us a faster ground speed. The headwind is going to give us a slower ground speed, and it's giving us a longer flight time. That's the init B page done. After init B page, we go to Papa, which is the performance page. Now, because we've already set up our departure, we'll be able to populate all this information. We just need to stick in our takeoff flaps. So I'm going to use flaps 2. It is a pretty standard takeoff flap settings for the Airbus. I pretty much always use flaps 2. So I'm going to stick that in there. Now, the trimmable horizontal stabilizer, you can fill in this information, but the Airbus does have what's called auto trim, so you really don't need to use it. I'm just going to stick in our flaps 2 there. So with the flap settings done, we can put in our V1, V rotate and V2 speeds by using the line select keys 1, 2 and 3 on the left here. So we're just going to stick that in there twice, once, twice, and one time to populate it and a second time to stick that in. So V1, our point of no return, V2 and V rotate and V2. Our transition altitude is 6,000 feet. That's where we're going to set the altimeter from airfield QNH to standard, which is 1013. Our thrust reduction height is 1,700 feet. That's where you're going to get the instruction on the primary flight display to set the throttles back to the climb position. So you're going to set the levers to the climb position. That's pretty much it for the entire setup of the MCDU. Now, if we go back to the flight plan page, because we finished setting up the init B page and the performance page, you can see we have all this information has now been populated. So we have our times, our speeds, altitudes for each waypoint set up all the way to our top of climb. And then we'll stay at 370, and there's our top of descent before Delta Kilo Bravo, all the way back down to our altitude restrictions there of 5,000 feet and our arrival into Munich. That's pretty much it for the setup of the MCDU using the Simbrief integration. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but without using the Simbrief integration. So let's reset this MCDU and start all over again. Okay, so I've reset the sim, and this time we're going to do everything manually. So we are cold and dark once again. Let's just give the aircraft some power. ADIRS 1, 2 and 3 must be set to nav. Just turn up some brightness here on the display. And on this one over here. And let's turn on the fly pad. Now, instead of importing everything from Simbrief, we're just going to reference the flight plan and input all the data manually. So we're going to ignore here where it says import Simbrief data. Let's go straight to the ground page, to the fuel page. So we're going to import the fuel manually. Our fuel for this flight was 6,210 kilograms. So we can start refueling there. And then our payload for this flight was 60.6. So we're just going to type that in there manually. We're going to go 60,600 kilograms. And then we're going to load that there. And as you can see, that's loading automatically there. So I am referencing these figures from my operational flight plan, which I did get from Simbrief. But obviously you guys can get these figures from whatever flight planning tools or software or websites that you use. So with the fuel and the payload inserted, we can head on over to the MCDU and start setting that up again. Now here we are back on the MCDU menu, and if you have a look, you can see everything is empty. We got no flight plan, no information, etc. So once again, we're going with the acronym DIFSRIP for data, init A, flight plan, secondary flight plan, RADNAV, init B, and our performance page. So let's start with data. Nothing to insert there. So we go to the next one, which is the init A page. And now we're going to type everything in manually. So from 2 is our departure and our arrival. We go Echo Golf Kilo Kilo / Echo Delta Delta Mike. Insert that there. And now what's this done is it's brought up a company route page, because I have a company route for this flight saved in the MCDU. If you haven't seen my video on company routes, check that out. I'll leave a link in the top right hand corner. We're going to ignore that, so we're just going to return. We're going to put in our flight number, which is Easy 8641. Stick that in there. We put in our cost index, which is 10. Our cruising flight level, which is 370. And let's put in our cruising flight level temperature, which is minus 52 degrees. That's your init A page setup. Then we can jump to the flight plan page. As you can see, we have an empty flight plan page. We only got the departure airport and the arrival airport. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can start with the first waypoint, or if you're flying offline and you want to do the departure first, you can start with that. So let's start with the departure first. We're going to go Echo Golf Kilo Kilo. Departure. Same as previously, we're going to go 08 right. I'm going to choose the Gatwick to Zulu departure, because our first waypoint is Gatwick, and we're going to insert that into our flight plan. Now you can see it's inserted all the waypoints for the Gatwick to Zulu departure and the altitude restrictions for the departure, and it's got our first waypoint, which is Gatwick. Now from there we need to insert the rest of our flight plan. So from Gatwick we are going to join the airway Yankee 311. So we're going to go Airways Yankee 311, insert that. From Yankee 311 we are going to Delta Victor Romeo. From Delta Victor Romeo we are joining airway Uniform Lima 9 to waypoint Kilo Oscar November Alpha November. Then we're going to join waypoint Uniform Lima 607 to Kilo Oscar Kilo. Then we're going from Kilo Oscar Kilo direct to our next waypoint, which is Mike Alpha Tango Uniform Golf. So we can insert what we've done so far. Then we're going to scroll down to our last waypoint. We're going to select it, and from there we're going to go next waypoint, Mike Alpha Tango Uniform Golf. I'm going to scroll down again because we've got another direct waypoint, which is from there we're going to our next waypoint, which is Mike Oscar Victor Uniform Mike. So that's our next waypoint. And then from there we're joining another airway, so we can go back down again to our last waypoint, which is that one. And then we're going to go Airways, and then we are going to join the airway Tango 109 and insert that there. Then we are Hotel Alpha Romeo Echo Mike. I'm going to insert that there. Then another airway Tango 104, and then our last waypoint, which is Romeo Oscar Kilo India Lima. Now you can imagine if you're doing a very long haul flight, to insert all of these airways and waypoints manually might become a little bit tedious. I do never really do this. I only use the Simbrief integrated option. It's much easier, but I'd like to demonstrate to you guys how to do this. So then we can insert that into our flight plan over there. And then we have a whole flight plan all the way down to Rockhill, and then a discontinuity to Echo Delta Delta Mike, and that's where we can stick in our arrival. So let's choose our arrival again. We're going to go runway 26 right. We're going to use the Rockhill 1 Bravo departure via Mike. Insert that. And if we have a look at our navigation display, to plan, let's pop that out for you. And if we step through it, you can see we have our flight plan as the previous one. No gaps, no discontinuities. Everything looking good. Let me just zoom out a little bit so we can see it better. We're going to scroll through it again. You can see we have the entire flight plan from departure to arrival. Everything looking good. All done manually. Right. Now that that's done, we can continue with the MCDU setup. So after flight plan, we have secondary flight plan. Nothing to input there. Rad nav. Same explanation as I said earlier. We have the VOR with a frequency, and you can turn on the pointers to point to those. Then we have our init B page. We're going to set this up the same as we did previously. So we have our fuel, 6,220 kilograms, rounded up to 6.3. Insert that there. And our zero fuel weight, if we select the line select key twice, 60.6, that is correct. Insert that there. We had our trip winds, which we referenced off the flight plan as well, which was a plus 24 knot tailwind. Flight time 1 hour 23 minutes. That is the init B page setup. From there we can head on over to the performance page. Our transition level, which we get off the chart, is 6,000 feet for this departure. Our flap settings, we're going to go for a standard flaps 2. Trimmable horizontal stabilizer, we're going to leave blank. Now, I get a lot of questions on my channel regarding this. I don't really use it. It's not really necessary for the A32nx. The Airbus does have an auto trim function, so we are going to leave that blank for now. If your flight planning software does calculate a takeoff CG where it will give you a value for that, then you can insert it in there. Otherwise, just leave it blank. Our V speeds, 128, 129, and 133. And there we have a fully set up MCDU doing everything manually. And that's pretty much all there is to setting it up without using Simbrief, and as I showed you before, with using Simbrief. If you guys have any questions regarding how to set up the MCDU, leave it in the comments below. I will get back to you. Otherwise, jump onto our Discord server and we can have a chat there. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, do all that good YouTube stuff. There are links below the channel if you would like to support us. You can do that as well. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the skies. Bye-bye.